As many of you know, I was my mother's study partner when she went back to college to pursue her nursing degree after my father died. There were many late nights of studying. She pored over flashcards with me. I'd quiz her on her notes. We'd walk through study processes. I'd set up itineraries for her to study. She would do the hands-on practice with me oftentimes, checking blood pressures, temperatures, checking ears and eyes and noses and throats. I drew the line, however, when she got the unit on giving shots. She could practice on an orange as far as I was concerned. But one of the more entertaining sections was the section on maternity. Now that's not really a great draw for a young teenage boy. But what was interesting was one of the texts that was used in that unit was called The Adventures of Egbert and Egberta, EGG. It was the cartoon and rather humorous and yet instructive journey from conception to birth. It was the story of two twin embryos as they developed in utero, the conversations they had that were really informative about what that was all about, and yet in a very humorous and comical style. I remember especially the journey out, when the contractions began and that whole conversation of pain and release, and the tunnel, and the light, and the voices. As I've learned over the years, there was a great similarity between what Egbert and Egberta shared on that journey and those stories that I hear of near-death experiences. The tunnel, the darkness, the brilliant light that you were drawn to, and the voices. In most cases, the voices in the near-death experiences are voices that send them back. And yet there is that sense of peace that they experience unlike anything else. I wonder if that's what it was like for Jesus on that first Easter morning. The trauma from death to life. I mean, physically, that had to be an incredible experience. And then to move from the darkness of that death and tomb into the brilliant light of the world again. Wow. He is risen. He is risen indeed. That journey from death to life has been the journey that we have walked these last few days. From the darkness of the cross and Good Friday to now the brilliance of Easter morning and the celebration of the resurrection. But it's a journey that we make all the time. From darkness to light. Some of us do it on a daily basis to move from the trauma, the chaos, the confusion of life, the utter darkness. Those days when we do not think we can take another step, when the journey seems almost as long as that journey from Jerusalem to Galilee, 100 miles. It seems like we will never get there, that our world will be always dark. And yet, there is that voice that says, I go before you. You will see me there. And not just at the end of the road, But we read in the days following that Jesus greets them even now, as he promises to greet us. As the church, we speak of that meeting in very concrete ways. We talk about Christ's resurrected presence in the waters of our baptism, in the word proclaimed, in the bread and wine of the Eucharist, Holy Communion, in the body gathered. But the resurrected Lord appears on our way all the time. And sometimes we miss it. Sometimes we only recognize it years later. But he is there in our midst. Sometimes it's in a friendly and familiar face, like a neighbor with a plate of cookies. Or it may be a note, a hug, a smile. It may be a little child who speaks of light and hope. Sometimes it may be even a stranger or an odd circumstance that reminds us, I am with you. No matter how dark the darkness gets, I go before you, leading you out of the darkness into the light, that you may have life and have it abundant. Martin Luther talked about that process of moving from darkness to light as a daily renewal of our baptism. And so our walk continues, a step at a time, as we journey from Jerusalem to Galilee, from darkness into light, from despair into hope. And as Jesus revealed himself in the breaking of bread with those disciples on the Emmaus Road, so too on our road does he break into our lives, that we might have strength in the midst of our weariness and have our joy restored. For lo, he goes before us, and we shall see him. Amen.